there. And I also have Simon Senyonga, who is the central candidate for Youth MP that covers 27 districts, but they are voted by delegates and not us, but they represent every youth in this country. 70 to 80% of the youth in this country are represented by them. We are on Facebook Live, Timothy Nyangoso, but I have messages flowing in thick and fast. I have someone who says here, the reward of service should not be looked at in monetary terms. It should be the satisfaction they get from a job well done. This will never be enough pay for the services that MPs do or offer to their people. Okay, that's a very good comment. Peter Barongo comes back here, and I think this is to Simon. Sorry, before I get to Peter, there's Paul Wendy here who says, I have listened to Simon and I like his fresh ideas. It's good to have someone who is youthful in mind and also has the ideas and the heart for the young people. Someone else says, yeah, I like what Charlotte is saying and the gentility she has. I don't know if she'll manage the lions in that parliament. When Peter goes on to say, unfortunately, fresh ideas require an overhaul of a dictatorship. With time, both Charlotte and Simon will succumb to the junta. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlotte, how do you plan to work on our education system? What is your plan?
My plan, firstly, because the education system is wide and it encompasses very many different stakeholders. I think,
and will you be able to complete it in 5 years?
No. It's a process.
Okay.
It's always going to be a process. Because the education that we're looking at is, in my opinion, should be now broadened to extend beyond the formal structures of education. What someone was suggesting in agriculture, very many people of ours that are engaged in agriculture actually not educated as much as they should be in the agriculture sector. So I want to advocate for an enlargement and a diversification of how education is translated into the different sectors, that then we shall understand what innovation really means in its entirety, that someone doesn't have to actually go to a university to learn what innovation is, that someone doesn't have to go to a certain institution to actually appreciate different fruits that come with education. So I think we need to broaden education. What I've seen through Skilling Uganda, what I've seen through the different measures that the government has implemented to employ very many young people into what they've so far given out as the Youth Livelihood Fund. Most people are just thrown into the basket and they've not been taught how best to utilize what the government is actually giving them. So I want to advocate for further education that extends beyond the institutions that we have today. And that is mainly the informal sector of education.
What quick turnarounds, low-hanging fruit, would you be able to turn around education? 3 things that in your 5 years you'd be able to do.
Number one thing that I'm really passionate about that makes me go to bed and happy is that when I look at our education system, if I have to look at the UPD sector, that does not have even one single nursery school in this country. I've traversed some of the regions and sub-regions in Uganda, and for some parts where it's mainly UPE, it's mainly government education, and that means there's hardly any private school, and also that means that you won't see even one nursery school in the entire sub-region. It's really painful that that kind of inequality starts from
why is your focus on nursery schools? What is there that...
Because most of the things that we are going to see as we advance into adulthood started or stemmed from when we were actually younger. That your understanding of education, your appreciation of the different mechanisms through which you learn actually advanced, and you start with them from when you were younger. So I think we need to have a balanced system of education. Now that is one thing for me. The second was what I already said, the informal sector of education. We are coming from a system where, from a history where most of us did not have to go to school, but we learned from our parents. We learned through what we now see as apprenticeship. We learned from the job that all these are things that have seemingly been dying out, that everyone is now just running to go to university, go to a certain technical institute to actually feel like you're in the education system. That the people on the sidelines are not really catered for. Then number 3 for me is to put up a policy that attracts many people who have dropped out of school back into school, especially the girls. There's so many young girls that have dropped out of school and they get to a certain place because maybe they were pregnant at the time and then they cannot continue with school. And when they are maybe 2 years later, they really want to go back to school, but the system doesn't seem to really encompass all that. So some of those are the things that I think we should bring back to our education system to widen it across and make it less discriminatory.
And I hope also the numbers are not on your side, because it shows 15 million are in UPE. By the time they get to UCE, it's 2 million shillings, about 200,000 go to university.
Yeah.
But let me turn to Simon here. Simon, agriculture, I'm passionate about it, and I'm glad you are too. 68% are subsistence, about 98% are involved in one way or another in agriculture. How do you turn it around? What are the low-hanging fruit, and how do you turn it around in 5 years to be able to see that the youth and also Ugandans benefit? And the biggest challenge, as you people who appropriate the budget when you go to parliament, it has the lowest amount of money. How do we have the biggest number of people, and then we have the lowest amount of money invested in the sector? What do you plan to do about this?
I think, number one, we need to amplify the fact that agriculture is the comparative advantage that we have over the nations, especially in Africa, but also within the East African community. So the first thing is to make sure there is enabling policy for the young people to participate in agriculture. Number one, we need to overturn some of these fake policies that are existing in the agricultural sector. Think about, for example, coffee, which has positioned, especially the central region, to have advantage in the nation, and also give advantage for us as a nation. And you have this whole national coffee bill, which was being propelled by especially the parliamentarians, right? And that was pushing out very many of the young people participating in agriculture, because the standards that were set in that particular bill were extremely high, especially at a monetary level.
Yes.
So what do you have to do? Make sure that there is enabling policy to ensure that everybody can meaningfully participate in the whole agricultural process at the different production levels. Now, at that particular level, you're supposed to make sure that you interest every young person depending on their ability. Think about it this way. Yesterday I was passing somewhere along this express highway, and I was looking at, I think there is a plantation.
Yes, a tea plantation.
A tea plantation. And I was thinking about the advantage that outgrowers should be having, especially in participating in the whole agricultural process. Now, you find that most of the outgrowers are not protected by the policy, but what policy protects is those who are at the end chain, those who are running the machines, those who are having the tractors, not the outgrowers. And how do I know that? Because the nature of the land policy does not actually favor them. All right? So somebody is using their small piece of land to produce. You realize that land ends up becoming, I don't know the right term to use, but I say land can become worn out because the more you grow on it, the more it can get worn out.
Yes.
What happens to outgrowers is that they're participating on a small piece of land, their land gets worn out, and there's no sort of compensation for them or giving them any leverage to ensure that they have better land. Why? Because most of the land is allocated to these apparent investors. Now, also our agricultural policy has that challenge. That advantage is not given especially to the Ugandans, but especially is given to the so-called foreign investors by giving them very huge tax holidays, all right, very huge tax exemptions. So you talk about agriculture, you can't divorce it from the whole tax policy that you have. If you're going to charge high taxes, especially on local products, you're not giving them advantage to be positioned at the East African community level, or even at the African level, or even at the basic international level. So the tax policies, I think for me, would be the first thing that you have to change. Number two, make sure that you have inclusive agricultural policy, especially for the young people to participate in. The point that I made, set up model farms for the young people, revive the cooperative societies, because those are the ones that are going to advantage the young people to participate at a local level. Because you see, we don't eat statistics. That's why I get disgusted when people quote for us statistics. So no matter how much statistics you quote, no matter how much you try to sound intellectual statistics, nobody eats statistics. So there has to be actual translation of the whole agricultural system from the top to the bottom. Then make sure at that basic level, at the political participation, how are we appropriating the budget? Why do we think that the budget should go more on military protection? That's why I disagree with the president of this nation. Why you keep on thinking that, you know what, make sure the country is secure, let the investors come in, let them invest money. Do you know what that means in terms of reverse psychology? It simply means keep the people poor, let the money come from outside, and let us have power to guard those who are on our side. Why don't we revive the corporations? Why don't we empower them? Why don't we empower those who are participating in those processes? Then you will see how much as we have the money as Ugandans. we have the potential as the Ugandans. Can you imagine the Chinese have to export sand? You've passed through Luera, you see what happens in Luera? How much sand is being exported by the Chinese? Where is it going? You get it? Why are we, there particular, if there is anything I will first of all advocate for, I know this can sound extremely, extremely, and I hope you know that by the time you hosted me, I wasn't going to say things that would be very comforting. One of the things I would have to first do is actually kick out some of these Chinese.
But Simon, you're one person. There are another 535 MPs. How do you plan to do that?
I've been invited here on my own behalf, and that is why I'm airing out the views that are personal to me.
But you remember that you need quorum and caucus numbers to be able to advocate and have this pass.
And who says that we are not able to lobby them and persuade them of this? You see, the thing is that we have sold out our nation to many of these people who are actually disadvantaging us. That you find that even the most smallest job, like doing chapati, is being done by some person out there.
Let's take this
who's not a Ugandan.
Hello? Hi. Your comment name, please. I am well. How are you? Yes, please. This is Ray, right? Thank you, Ray. So that was Ray reminding us to wash our hands, sanitize, and all these other things. So we'll get there. Simon, sticking to you before I come back to Charlotte, and we want to discuss the roles of MPs. Agriculture is a big thing. We have, and I know you don't eat statistics, but I have most of those. 54% of our land in the region is the most arable land. How do we take cooperative advantage of this, especially with the growing population? We're at 43 million Ugandans, and 45 and growing. How do we still, and the land is not growing, and we're still fragmenting it. How do we take advantage of this, and also looking at the value chain? How do we get the youth positioned? And please keep in mind, and this is the same question I'll bring to you, Charlotte. Keep in mind, these young people leave university with nothing. He has no money, he has no ntandikwa. And we'll get to a Myoga and livelihood fund later. How do we position them? Because agriculture, for me, could be the place that we need to go to, but also couple it with technology.
I think from the very first thing, to take a progressive approach is to ensure that young people move away from this whole subsistence, sort of living, all right, to be able to have something much more sustainable. Because this one, the thing with being a subsistence, a farmer or a person, is that the money, what you work for is what you eat. There has not been a culture of investing, all right? And that brings me to the point of making sure that let us modernize the agricultural process, all right? Because then, number one, we are able to have timely results. We are able to have much more quality results. Now, that is in no way saying that I support, for example, some of this rubbish like the GMO bill and the GMO whatever, that kind of thing. What I'm saying is that let us use advanced technology, all right? Let us equip the young people with machines that can be able to help them grow on a larger scale. Because what happens to most of the young people, they will tell you, the government has come and has distributed hoes to the family. How much work can you do with a hoe, right, across a period of time, right? The other thing is that let us make sure, especially for the arable land, let us make sure that we have strategic partnerships with people who actually understand the mindset of the people that they're dealing with. I am not of the view that actually the government entirely understands what is the plight of the young people. Somewhere down saying Butambala. And that is why I tell you that, for example, work with the kingdom institutions or the cultural institutions that work with the Buganda kingdom, because they appreciate the nature of the people that they are working with. They have the historical advantage to appreciate what they are all about, as opposed to somebody who simply wants power and they go away. I think cultural institutions, from the very word go, they have the heart of their people in their mind, but also it's because they are looking to help their people beyond just a period of time of 5 years. Now, in terms of goodwill and political goodwill, those are the people who would actually give us advantage. And that is where, for example, you can't dismiss the nature of the governance system that we have in this nation. Is it time for us to be thinking about, for example, the federal sort of government? Emphatically, yes. Because then you're having people who are thinking about their people in a much more clear-minded way. They're not pushing out other people. They don't think about just how they can have political power. Because you see, land is beyond just a platform. Land is beyond just, how can I call it? In terms of that economics that we learned.
A means to an end?
It's not just, a means that you can have, but also land is a form of, it's a political tool. That's what has caused this whole political clashes, for example, in Kenya. It's all because of land. Even just here in, Uganda. Remember the time when they wanted to amend the land bill in 1999? And now they wanted to disadvantage some of the areas in this nation? It was because of land. So, the policy level, the modernization of the agriculture, the political will, and also strategic partnerships for the young people, and establishment of model farms to inspire the young people to be interested in the agriculture.
Charlotte, your comment, then we'll get to the roles of parliament.
Something that someone said along the way, that the government doesn't seem to understand the aspirations of the people. With an example he gave of Butambala, I think it's an undermining the people of Butambala, because ideally the people of Butambala should have representatives that voice their issues at the floor of parliament, in governance, and everywhere. Their views should really be heard. And I think that's how representation of the different spaces we come from should actually be administered. That wherever you come from, whatever group you are, whether it's special interest or not, you have people out there who actually are able to voice out your issues. So in a democracy, that should really be addressed. And also to now talk about the issue of agriculture and land. I think it's unfortunate, but like you said, most young people are finishing school and they have hardly anything apart from maybe a certificate that they've received from school. Now that brings me to the issue that most of us, as we've left school, you don't have capital, you do not have land, all you can maybe afford is some labor force. And at the end of the day, it's a question of where is your labor going? The highest bidder, or just settling for less because that's the best that you actually want to be advanced in. So we're seeing some of these becoming the issues when it comes to agriculture. But the best I would call the young people to is to place themselves in the production mechanisms of what agriculture really is. Yes, there is a lot of us who are offering labor in agriculture, from the very basic of what agriculture really is, through farming and all that. But at the end of the day, you do not own the land. And what Simon said earlier is that at the end of the day, the beneficiaries are going to be the landowners. The same issue that extends from the youths to the women. You're not landowners. So I think some of these policies should also be to address the issues that young people are facing when it comes to land ownership, as well as the women. And at the end of the day, that's when agriculture now would make more sense. But what I've heard our president, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, say over and over again is to call the Ugandans to move away from subsistence to actually commercialization of agriculture. And I think it's still a big challenge in our country that most of us, because of the land segmentations, like you already said, we are forced into the small production rates. But I think we need to advocate for some of the land policies that include how does the government make sure, if we had faith in the government that we are going to vote come 2021, because I still believe in a democracy, that if we had faith in that government, we would advocate for land where because I see Chinese, and what someone already said, Chinese are taking advantage of this. They can afford to buy large chunks of land and use that land to actually do commercial farming. And again, at the end of the day, you find that most of the commercial farmers are people who have a lot of capital. And that's what's inviting very many investors from outside the country. So I think it's a lot to do with the policies that we have to address the land issue. And I'll go back to what someone said, that we really, really need to call upon the government and parliamentarians to really revise the land issue, because it's causing so many of these other discriminatory issues to arise from elsewhere. I'll also go back to one of the things that I think you raised. Currently, Parliament has been discussing the local content bill on how to address issues of Buy Uganda, Build Uganda, and all these other issues that come from, for instance, our petroleum laws and the like. And it's to broaden the perspective that, hey, look here, we're advancing into an era where everything that should be in Uganda, that should be bought in Uganda, should be by Ugandans, and how are the Ugandans reading the market or reading their services to actually fit in those shoes? Because at the end of the day, we're going to have to examine what quality of products are we having as Ugandans and which people are actually at the forefront of production. So I think these are advantageous positions and opportunities for very many young people to venture into. But the policies at the end of the day are the ones going to attract us and sustain us in some of these places.
Charlotte and Simon, we have run out of time, but I have 2 minutes for each of you to be able to give your closing remarks, but also please couple in a few bills that are pending, the marriage and divorce and separation. You guys are lawyers, but also the homosexuality bill that is also being, these are some of the things that will come on the floor, but also the national budget, as you conclude in 2 minutes, starting with you, now close with Simon.
I'll talk about the marriage and divorce bill. I mean,
Okay.
from a feminist and a woman perspective, I think we come from a place where most of our issues are still looked through the social and cultural eyes, and it's affecting how our parliamentarians also advocate for policies and the likes. That I remember a certain lady around 2016 who went out to her constituency and asked people for their views, and in her message, what she was preaching was that, you know, if a man doesn't beat you, you see, he doesn't love you. So we still have some of these societal habits, and they're still holding us back when it comes to some of the policies that we make in Parliament. Because I think some of the, like you said, the marriage and divorce bill has a lot of those translations, even in the members of Parliament we have, that just because we have women who are representing women issues, they don't necessarily speak the same language. They come with different backgrounds, and I think at the end of the day, this should be married to understand that, hey, a woman does not have to be battered for her to actually understand the love that the husband has for her, or the boyfriend, or any other person in society. So it's, for me, a place where we have to constantly advocate that at the end of the day, the parliamentarian should not just represent their views, but the views of the larger society, and what do the people have to say. So.
Okay, over to Simon. Those are your concluding remarks, Charlotte?
Not in conclusion, but in particular to that.
Okay, as you conclude, so that I can give Simon one block chance to be able to conclude.
Okay, in conclusion, I think 2021 is not yet defined as who is going to represent us in Parliament and to become also the president of this country, as well as the other positions of power in this country. So I call upon all the Ugandans to still have faith, to have an understanding that it's a democracy. Your vote is your voice. If you feel like this particular person should not be representing me in Parliament, come out and actually cast that vote to the person that you think should be representing in Parliament. Let's not lose faith. I hear most of the comments that are being thrown at us are coming from a place where people no longer believe in the leadership that they're actually getting. So I think it's a virgin place that most of us can still show what our interests and aspirations are through the people that we're going to select in leadership.
Okay, Simon, I'll just give you your concluding remarks because I have a minute.
All right. Number one, I think as we go into the elections, there is a lot that is left to be desired, especially by the way those in power have conducted themselves, the security forces, the political actors, the way many of them, I see many of them speaking out as if this nation, they will not be in this nation after 2021. They speak with a degree of arrogance, primitive arrogance, and a lot of, archaic mentalities that are not worthy to be brought on serious political table. In regards to the pending bills, I think I'll take on the one of the anti-homosexuality bill. Well, homosexuality is not the biggest challenge of our nation, but it is something that is, from my Christian perspective, something extremely despisable, irrelevant, and unnecessary that goes to the core of the cultural fabric and destroys it because there is a limitation. And I think there is a call to action, especially for us who are going in Parliament, to broaden our perspective beyond just the national issues, but also to appreciate that there are very many, there is a world order out there that is trying to be imposed through different governments of this world. That's why we need sober, clear-headed leaders in these different places of leadership. But to the young person out there, it's for them to realize that they have a stake in this nation. They shouldn't simply sit back and be used as political tools by receiving mere handouts to exercise their political rights. But there should be people who should call out The leaders, the people who should be accountable, but also ask for accountability. They should be people who are using their energy as a tool to make sure that they have meaningful participation in the different places of leadership. But above all, for me, to call out to the young people to vote for Simon Senyonga as their leader in the next parliament, to represent them in the central region. For the delegates to remember that name.
True, and I want to thank my guest, Charlotte Natkunda, who is vying as an independent candidate for the National Youth MP and National Female Youth Member of Parliament, and also Simon Senyonga, who is vying as an independent candidate for the Central Youth Member of Parliament. Our job here as Power FM is to bring you the candidates. Yours is to decide who is making sense for you, and you go on to vote for them. But also, as Charlotte said, we need to believe in our country and we need to have faith in our country because we have no other country, but this is our home. God bless you. Have a happy Boxing Day. Becky's in the studio. She'll be taking you on the Power Chat show.
Look at us, Becky. Look at us.